You are listening to Scenecraft Nightcap. Welcome to another Nightcap, a series of bonus episodes where we pull back from the scene and into the wider world of film. This is younger, better Cody here with
younger, better Mark.
And younger, better Connor.
And joining us today, we are so excited to have friend of the show, Samantha, as our special guest. Welcome, Samantha.
Hello. Thank you guys for having me. Unfortunately, I am not the younger, better Samantha. You guys just get roughly same quality Samantha.
That's the one we want. We're happy to have you.
Yeah. You get the Samantha that is greasily and hastily eating shrimp and then tossing the tails over her shoulder.
I actually wish it were you instead of Dennis Quaid. So that would be great. That was the one issue I had, maybe.
I would have done it for free.
Well, as you may be able to guess, we have a very special episode today. We'll be covering The Substance, directed by Coralie Fargeat. And after we give our general thoughts on the film, we'll be joined by Special Makeup Effects Supervisor Pierre-Olivier Persin to discuss his prosthetic and creature design work on the film. The logline for The Substance reads, "A fading celebrity takes a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself."
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. One single injection unlocks your DNA and will release another version of yourself. This is The Substance.
So let's first talk about The Substance as a whole. And I think, for the listener, you can assume that we're going to go into spoilers right from the top. So just to give that warning, give you a couple seconds to tune out if you haven't seen the film or don't want to be spoiled. Then we will get into our pro take interview with Pierre. So Samantha, you are our guest for the day. What did you think of The Substance?
Well, if there's one thing that Cody has probably learned about my film taste, it's that I absolutely love it when a film just unabashedly goes there. And The Substance is pretty much the pinnacle of going there as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not typically a body horror fan. Like, I wouldn't regularly seek this kind of film out. I was even a little bit afraid that I might be one of those people that got a little bit nauseous or maybe wanted to leave in the middle of it. But I caught a little bit of hype for it from my cousin who went to see it and really loved it. And so I decided to go see it with my friend Rachel on a recent trip to LA. The first thing I want to say, which isn't a direct comment on the movie itself, but I think is always worth mentioning when it happens, is that this became an easy top 5 theater-going experience for me when we went. I think our crowd was a fairly even mixture of people who were really riled up in a good way about what was going on screen, with people who also didn't quite know what they'd gotten themselves into. But by the time we got to the last 30 or so minutes, it was a really rowdy atmosphere of a lot of laughter, a lot of cheering. And it was one of those experiences where I'll always remember the energy in that room.
Mm-hmm.
And when we left the theater, I turned to my friend Rachel and I said, when she vomited the boob, I levitated, which I'm certain is a sentence that has never been said before. But as a light spoiler, that is a moment in the movie that I was just like jaw on the floor, eyes bulging, could not believe what I was seeing.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to talk more specifically about the film itself, The Substance is a total roller coaster that just keeps ramping up in absurdity. But what makes this movie so astounding for me is that there are layers and layers of proficient storytelling stacked around all of that insanity. So you can be totally blown away by what you're seeing on screen, but also make a good faith reading of the film and find a lot to relate with.
Mm-hmm.
The production design is elite. The special effects are obviously top notch. And maybe most impressive to me are the performances of the two leads, Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, who both just knock it out of the park.
Hmm.
I know on the Nightcap episodes, we're not doing the full deep dive scene analysis, but if I can quickly shout out one of my favorite scenes from the movie,
Oh,
it's the
yeah.
scene where Elizabeth, as played by Demi Moore, is getting ready to go out on a date with this old high school classmate that she has sort of reconnected with earlier in the film. And the scene is basically just her getting ready in the mirror, doing makeup, getting ready for the night out, attempting to convince herself to walk out the door, but instead she constantly comes back to touch herself up because she's
Mhm.
frustrated and dissatisfied with her appearance. And eventually it becomes clear that she's just not going to make it to this date.
Mm-hmm.
Moore does an incredible job selling the frustration and the hopelessness of this moment. I think it's really impressive that this movie is so outsized and bizarre, but can still slow itself down enough to have a really poignant human moment that a lot of people will identify with and find familiar.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I think the choice to go there and make this film so absurd is a brilliant way to sort of zoom out and underscore the absurdity of the beauty standards placed on women and the lengths people will go to live up to those standards.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's a really great way to kind of bring that up, Samantha. And I share a lot of the same thoughts as you, but I kind of want to start off my general take with an open question. Does anybody recall their first run in with the idea or concept of body horror?
I think for me, it might have been like The Thing, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe like Alien a little bit too.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I distinctly remember my first experience with it, even if I wasn't aware of the term, was actually from a book in the R.L. Stine Goosebumps series called My Hairiest Adventure. Really obscure reference here, but I recall the general premise being this kid who applies this medical lotion that he finds in a trash can on his body, and to his horror, he finds out that he starts uncontrollably growing hair to wherever he applied it on his body. And as a young kid, the idea of losing control of your body really shook me to my core. And for whatever reason, I just became like fixated on that story. Um, but that being said, the substance takes the idea of body horror obviously to a whole new level. So here's the thing. If you feel like the film industry is stagnant, or if you're looking for a film that really shakes things up, then this is definitely the movie you want to go see this year. The Substance is an in-your-face satirical takedown of the impossible beauty standards set by the media. And I will say that this movie is undoubtedly a lot, and it may not be everyone's cup of tea, but my eyes were glued to the screen for the entirety of the runtime. I think it was about 2 hours, but it was actually hard for me to tell because of how quickly things went by.
Mm.
Hmm.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the experience of seeing this with a crowd, Samantha, because
Yeah.
there were several times where there was like a collective gasp in the theater, and it just made that whole experience a lot more special. So I'm really glad I saw it in that way. And the world of The Substance is this heightened, surreal, and occasionally hyper realistic version of our own, but it goes to these absurdly gruesome lengths to emphasize its critique of the appearance obsessed culture that we live in. And I think Demi Moore gives a career best, fearless performance, and she's absolutely deserved of all the accolades that she's getting from this performance. One thing I really appreciate about this film is that it makes the decision not to go into the origins of the substance itself.
Yeah.
We're simply cued into its existence, and we just have to accept it for what it is. And
Mhm.
I think by doing this, the film is able to dedicate nearly the entirety of its runtime to Elizabeth's story, which is far more interesting in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I think the parallel of it being a roller coaster that you mentioned, Samantha, is really apt because once it kind of reaches the very top of the hill, the ensuing descent into madness for the last 20 or 30 minutes was just something that truly shocked me. I think it felt like a fever dream in the best way possible. And it felt like the perfect fit for the confident, chaotic tale leading up to it. So I obviously love the movie, and I have to ask Connor. I know you're not one for gross out movies, and prior to seeing this movie, we had a group text that I was, I was genuinely concerned about you seeing this one. So I'm very curious. What did you think?
So I had a pretty different viewing experience. The Substance just became available to stream on Mubi, so I watched this at home,
Hmm.
and I didn't get that full theater experience with the crowd reactions. I'm sure that added quite a bit. Like just hearing
Sure.
both of your stories about it, I feel like I
Yep.
missed out on something by not getting that full experience of all the cheering and gasping that I heard.
Oh, definitely.
So I think the concept of The Substance is great, but for me, I think the concept was actually better and more interesting than what the movie turned out to be. It reminded me, controversial take, a bit of Old from M. Night Shyamalan in that way.
Hmm.
A super interesting premise that blends science fiction elements together with body horror and social commentary, but ultimately just ends up in a less interesting place than it had the potential to. Like, it would have been a great short story, but there wasn't enough there from a story standpoint to make it a great novel, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Once you know where it's headed, it's kind of a slow march to the end that you're forced to see play out. Don't get me wrong, all of the special makeup effects, production design, the visual aesthetic of the film's world, they're all great. The performances from Moore and Qualley, like you both said, are solid. They both really give it their all. But for how much effort and thought was put into the execution of the story, I just wish there was more to the character of Elizabeth herself, because she ends up being one of the most thinly drawn characters I could remember ever seeing in a movie. Like there's literally nothing to her.
Hmm.
So it became a barrier for me. Like for how much time we spend with this character, like you said, Mark, I can't really care about this person or what happens to her if you're just going to treat her like a caricature and not tell me anything about who she is. But Mark and Cody, based on what you guys had told me, I was actually expecting this to be way grosser than it was.
No way.
I mean, it definitely goes to some gross places, but it didn't disturb me really at all. What did you
Wow.
think, Cody?
Well, I'm glad that it didn't. Mark was texting me. I feel guilty.
Yeah.
It's like
I use that word.
I feel guilty about making Connor watch this. So I think we're all glad that it wasn't that for you, and that it was manageable for sure. Because Mark, I think you said it was in like top, your top tier of like gross imagery, right?
I mean, some of it.
Terrifier. Yeah, Terrifier.
So I think that's the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
because this was body horror and it was a bit more sci-fi and fantastical in that regard,
Mhm.
when it's something like Terrifier 2 and it's like a cruel kill scene, I think that's what really disturbs me more
Yeah.
from a gore
Okay.
standpoint than
Okay.
this.
Fair enough. Then like just the imagery itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the criticisms with The Substance, like what you've said, Connor, what I've read about it on the negative side, but yeah, I think it really does ride that line between treatise on misogynist beauty standards, but then alternatively, it can become the very thing that the film is denouncing
Mm.
in some sequences, and playing into that, Connor, the thinly drawn character of Elizabeth, for me, it worked because of what it shows you about her visually. Like
Mhm.
you're kind of brought into her interior just by what you're seeing, but the
Yeah.
fact that it is not a dialogue driven film, I think could also have the opposite effect
Mm-hmm.
of not developing a character enough. So I definitely see that and acknowledge it for sure. Yeah, and it becoming the very thing it's speaking out against. Were there too many shots of Margaret Qualley twerking in a leotard? Maybe that's for you to decide. But it is certainly shot in a way that cues the audience to gaze at her. So there's some debate there. I'm not sure about those aerobic sequences overall. I found Dennis Quaid's performance to be a bit too outlandish in this post-Me Too industry. But who's to say when this film actually does take place? There's a certain retro aesthetic blended with modern sci-fi concepts. It's kind of like 80s with the aerobic videos. And so
Yeah.
interesting place and time that it's choosing to be in. I don't know when. But other than those apprehensions about the film, I think the substance is really special, and Fargeat and her team absolutely knocked it out of the park from an executory standpoint. From the very first frame, opening a wordless exposition sequence depicting the way in which an egg yolk replicates after being injected with the titular substance, it really scratched an itch for me personally by just simply and beautifully introducing us into this multi-step sci-fi process. I think in lesser films, like Connor, you said Old. I think Old would have done it the opposite way. We're kind of like spoon-fed a paragraph of dialogue from concerned scientist number one, who, in the case of Old, was played by like Shyamalan, probably.
Right.
But from the very beginning, the substance shows its true colors as a creative and visually effective science fiction film, even as it descends into completely disgusting body horror, which, you know, it definitely won't be for everybody. But Connor, you've given me more confidence that like more people could stand this imagery. Yeah. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley commit harder to these roles than any actors I can recall in recent memory, despite what you feel about the character they committed. The gruesome prop design and nightmarish prosthetics are, you know, top level. They immerse us in this world. And in my opinion, the finale, for me, it's this cathartic, tragic, impressive full circle sequence that left me totally satisfied and shaken. The imagery of the Hollywood Walk of Fame stars, the book ending, it really, really worked for me. Overall, I thought the substance was phenomenal. And so, you know, regardless of your opinion on the film, I do think one thing we can all agree on is that the creature and prosthetic work on the film was absolutely top-notch. So let's kick it over to Special Makeup Effects Supervisor Pierre-Olivier Persin to tell us more, but not before thanking Samantha for joining us here today. Thanks, Samantha, and we are looking forward to having you back soon for a full episode.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was a ton of fun. Can't wait to do it again.
Thanks, Samantha.
Yeah, thank you.
Amateur or professional?
Professional.
Hi, Pierre. Thank you so much for joining us on Scenecraft to talk about The Substance.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this being the pro take section of the podcast, we always like to dig a little bit into the background of our guest. How did you first get started in prosthetics and special effects makeup for film? And then how did that lead into your involvement in The Substance?
First, as you can hear, I am French, and I grew up in the suburbs. Obviously, I cannot hide that. And I grew up in the suburbs of Paris. I was born in 1974, so I really fell in love with makeup effects when I was 15 years old. So I guess around 1988, 1989. So obviously, special makeup effects was king at the time, and our queen, but it was really important. And so I always loved movies. I felt in love with makeup effects. So for Christmas, when I was a teenager, you know, the usual, I had latex and plastiline and whatever. And I was doing Super 8 short movies in the woods with my friends. Terrible ripoff of I don't know, The Evil Dead or Street Trash or movies of the time, and so that was it. But back in the days in France, although we always had a movie industry, at the time we didn't have a special makeup effects industry at all. There were only 2 or 3 people doing that in France, so it was not a job. But I guess. With people from my generation, we created the market in which we are now. But anyways, cut to 30 years later, The Substance. And now we have makeup effects studios and we are busy and all that, and that's great. And yeah, I got a call from the French executive producer who used to be a production manager I've worked with before, and he called me saying, you know, we are interviewing a few companies. Would you like to read the scripts? Yeah, sure. So I met with Coralie, director, Coralie Fargeat. And and I guess the final touch was I read the script, I met with Coralie and Nicolas, and I did I sculpted at night. I was working on another show and I sculpted a small maquette of the monster in the end, and just like that. And sent pictures and videos to Coralie. And she said, wow, I really like the direction. And I guess that got me the job in a way.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's amazing. I want to talk a little bit more about that relationship with Coralie. So what were those early conversations like when you guys were discussing the prosthetic effects that needed to be created, and how much of the detail was presented in the actual script?
We worked together a lot. But all of the characters were written, but not always described. So, for instance, I don't know if it's a spoiler, so spoiler ahead, but for the monster at the end and the screaming head on the back was written. It was clearly written, but the monster herself was not described. And the design phase was quite long. It was not easy, but quite straightforward for a few characters, like the one we call Gollum. It was quite easy to understand what she wanted and Coralie. And so very quickly, and nothing's easy, but quite quickly we had the design and everybody was happy with. I guess the most difficult was the one we call Monstro. It took us months to really get. We had the kind of the main shapes and everything were there already, but to really go into details, it took us a lot of time. So basically, it was like sculpting maquettes, doing photoshops, doing digital sculpts, a little bit of everything, old school, new technologies, and a little bit of everything in between. That was. But I was sending lots of videos from the workshop. I was testing things. I was doing for instance, for the birth scene at the beginning in a bathroom, I did a small version in silicone of the back, just a small one, and I animated it and filmed it and sent it to Qualley, so she was able to really see what it could look in life size.
Wow.
Oh, amazing. I actually wanted to dig into a little more of that, if you don't mind going into some more detail in the birthing scene of the bathroom. There's a lot going on. Sue obviously emerging from Elizabeth's back, which you just talked about, suturing that wound together, the food IV placement into the arm, and that huge stabilizer spine syringe. Could you walk us through how you achieved these very realistic looking effects?
They were great effects to work on. I really liked the birth. But basically, what we did, and that's an approach we had on the whole show, was like to use kind of puppets, kind of sophisticated puppets, or prosthetics on the actress, and a mix of both. And so for the birth scene, it was really a mix of silicone dummies animated from below the set. I had sets built for us, so we could be like 5 or 6 of us puppeteers under the set just to animate the backs. We have 2 different dummy backs.
Wow. For
the one which is completely distorted and the one ripping open. And then we had like a full back prosthetic on the actress or her photo double in that case. And for all the stitching and everything, and the same for the puncture, the spine and the syringe. We had fake backs, silicone backs, so we could dummies, so we could really put the needle inside the skin, like the real thing, and then suck the spine fluid through the skin as you do, and also we had prosthetics, different abscess prosthetics and different stages of abscess and that we applied. So depending on the shot, and we did all that. And even if you remember when Sue, or during Sue's birth, you see her arm popping out of the back, and even that was just a puppet arm. It was just silicone arm, and that was lots of fun.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
great.
Well, it looked amazing.
Yeah, it looked
oh
really
my
good.
God.
Thanks.
So I actually come from a medical background, and I have to say that the aging effects on Demi Moore's finger, her legs, and feet were incredibly convincing. The skin is thinner, the veins and bony prominences look real to life. And so I wanted to know, did you use any visual references, and how did you balance realism with surreal elements in your designs?
Yes, we always use lots and tons of references regarding the colors, the shapes, or study as much as we can. So we had all of that. To me, it was really important. I mean, what was difficult with that stage of aging, we called requiem. Okay, like requiem for dream. And so that was that stage. And what was difficult, I think, is like, I mean, prosthetics, it is an additive process. Obviously, you apply a prosthetic, you build up volume because you just stick an appliance on top of someone else's body or face. So you just built up volume. And so it's okay if you built up both arms, for instance, because you built up both arms. But if one arm is supposed to be skinny and old and all weird, and the normal arm, if the skinny arm is bigger suddenly than the normal arm, because when you remember in the movie, you can really compare, does not work. So it looks goofy, and I really didn't want that. So what we did is, rather than building the usual kind of big appliances, nothing wrong with that, but we just built up, for instance, the knee and the bones, like in the ankle. We were doing that, and then we were gluing veins, like silicone veins, and also varicose veins, and that we transferred before the appliances. So we were building up volumes like the knees, the elbows, and the ankles, all those bones, and adding veins and everything. And then on top of that, we added very, very, very paper thin appliances, translucent. So, but like it was almost nothing, just wrinkled skin. And so through that very thin skin, we could see the veins and the varicose veins and the bones sticking out. And I guess it helped, to give that translucent old skin. I really wanted to work with translucency. And Coralie really wanted to go really far, and obviously. So I love fantasy. I love horror movies and everything. But most of the work I do for French movies is very realistic stuff for realistic movies. And so I guess I had that approach because that's the way we were used to work. And apart from that, I guess the main world was like, go crazy.
Wow. Yeah, it really does have a perfect blend of, somebody is sticking a syringe into their arm, and that is 100% real, but then also the monster fantasy element of it too. So there's a great blend there of the two. And speaking of, Pierre, you mentioned your golem design earlier with Demi Moore, which is truly amazing. Can you tell us about the evolution of that design? Where did you start with it? And your and Coralie's decision to make that transformation really slow and not just immediately go to 100%.
Yeah, Coralie, that's her movie. And then she wanted, to me, for the Requiem stage, the one before, she wanted to go a little bit too far too quickly. And I thought it was going to spoil the Gollum character. And so I was like, So we had a little fight about that. So let's keep it subtle at the beginning and then go crazy, bonkers. And that's what we did. And well, for Gollum, what we had is I asked, Demi was inside Gollum. She had, all the face makeup and everything was on her.
Wow.
And we had a half her upper torso, like a half makeup, half body was made up also with Demi when she's looking at herself in the mirror. Although when she's naked and running down the corridor and all that, I asked for very, very skinny photo double with no breast and very, very skinny. And we put because again, it's an additive process.
Right.
So we had that special stunt body double. She was amazing. She was a trooper. Demi was a trooper, and the stunt double, Alize, was trooper too. She was like, I don't need to go to the bathroom, stick everything on. Wow. And even the gloves and everything else. And so I was like, are you sure? Because she was like, yeah, it's going to look better. Yeah. So do it. She was like, wow, thank you. Yeah, it was amazing. Because I'm not sure I would have done that. And and it's very important. And yeah, it was lots of fun. I really wanted to use silicone for the full body suit. It was not a suit actually. It was really prosthetics glued onto her body. I really wanted it to move well and not have weird wrinkles that you can have because she falls on the floor and all that, and it could move weirdly. And wanted to be silicone and to have like veins and stuff, but inside the silicone, and not only painted on top of it, but really things that we put like wool, red wool, or stuff that we put inside the silicone. So we really had this things creeping out under the skin, and I really like that character. Wow. I think it is one of my favorites.
Oh, awesome.
Lots of love. We put lots of love in.
Yeah, no, you can tell.
Yeah.
And bright lights. At first, I asked Coralie, I said, in the bathroom, because lots of things happen in the bathroom, are we gonna have a nice something a bit dark and with shadows and to hide a little bit the silicone and all that? And she was like, yeah. Cut to the white tiles.
Bright white.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide.
No.
No
hiding.
So we've been working towards this moment in the film, but finally we see the Monstro design in all of its glory. And I know you had touched on this a bit earlier, but could you tell us about the build process on some of the individual body parts of Monstro? And was it like one large creature suit, or was it individual prosthetics placed on Margaret Qualley?
It was a bit of both. It was her face was prosthetic makeup. Okay. It was a hood and a silicone face. It was a foam latex hood and a silicone face, and the body was suit, foam latex suit, two halves, the bottom half and the top half, and the gloves and feet. And I have to say that for the Monstro, I designed for months the character, and once Coralie was happy with her, because we were so busy and so late and so many reasons, I subcontracted the build of Monstro to UK company Dave and Lou Elsie. They have to be mentioned here, and they did an amazing job, and they are amazing artists. So they really saved our butt on that. Then they built it, and they did a great job in a short notice. And then we did the application and all the rest, the blob and the boobs popping out, and we rebuilt all that. But what can I say? We had Margaret Qualley inside the suit for the close-ups. It was a big fight with Coralie and me and I have to say she was right. And because we had a stunt double for the wide shots because all the blood stuff was crazy. It was like a fireman hose. The proper thing. It was really dangerous. It could She was on the trolley when she comes down the corridor with all the blood spurting everywhere. She was on a trolley because it really helped with that massive fireman hose, and she was pulled back because of the wheels on the trolley, because of the power of the the blood coming out. And it was insane. And so we had a stunt double. And even for her, it was really difficult for the white shots and all the blood stuff. And we had Margaret for all the close-ups. And even though it's only one eye, Coralie really wanted that elephant man and woman feel tragedy, comic tragedy. And so if memory serves, we had to cut and repair and sew the suit all the time. And once it was soaked in blood, and because it was, even though I was spraying, waterproof spray, whatever, to keep the foam latex to soak up all the blood, it was turning pink, and it was not drying, and so we were drying it all night, and I tried to sew or glue back a suit full of wet blood, and it was fun, but sometimes it wasn't really.
That sounds like a crazy day on set.
Yeah. It was quite a few days, actually.
Oh, wow.
Well, we always like to kind of end these interviews by asking, is there like a particular moment, and in this instance, a prosthetics moment that you are especially proud of in this film that you may think that would go unnoticed by viewers?
Yeah. At the end of the movie, when it's all bonkers and crazy, Monstro's head explodes, right? So we did that. That was fun. And then the head grows back. And you kind of see it in the movie, but so we had different heads, the growing back. And because Coralie was really up to use practical effects and all that, we were able really to use the kind of fake heads you never do nowadays because of all the digital aspect of it now. And so it was really back of the old 80s, old school heads, and so to be able to do that, like to puppeteer and to have those heads growing back, was lots of fun, because they knew the movie was going to be complicated because of the practical effects. So we had a quite long shooting schedule, which was great, like 4 or 5 months. And at the end of the movie, we had like 3-4 weeks of what we call lab, which was first unit, but a reduced first unit to be able to shoot without the actresses, or just to reduce team, crew, all the effects, all the puppets and all the birth and the heads growing back. Yes, I love doing that.
Wow. Yeah, that seems like that would be a really fun period of time on set where you're just focusing on all of that. That's really cool. Well, thank you, Pierre, for all of your detail on the substance. You said at the beginning of the interview, in the 80s, special makeup work and prosthetic, that was king or queen. You are definitely bringing it back.
Yeah.
And it's really, really convincing. It's really grotesque and fun. So a huge congratulations to you and your whole team on the film. It's really, really cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Pierre-Olivier Persin for his pro take on The Substance, now streaming on Mubi, available for purchase through Apple TV and a number of other platforms. Also, if you do check your local theater listings, it may still be playing by you, so go check it out in theaters if you can. Clearly, it adds to that experience of seeing the film. And once again, we want to thank our special guest, Samantha, and also, of course, thank you, the listener, for tuning in to this special Nightcap episode. We'd love to hear what you thought of the film. Feel free to email us at contact@scenecraftpodcast.com or follow us on your preferred social media platform @Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. See you all next time.